Welcome back, everyone, to our third section of Pada 1 of the Yoga Sutras. I'm here again with Kriya Yoga teacher Danelle Mason from New Zealand, who will be leading us through the chants of the sutras. Thank you for being here today again, Danelle.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. And today we're going to be going through, I believe, 112 through 116, which focuses on the practice of yoga in the sense of practice, Abhyasa, and detachment, Vairagya. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Danelle, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, good. All right. Namaste. We're going to start with Sutra 112. Abhyasa, Abhyasa, Vairagyabhyam, Vairagyabhyam, Abhyasa, Vairagyabhyam, Abhyasa, Vairagyabhyam, Tan nirodha, Tan nirodha. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam, Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam, Tan nirodha, Tan nirodha. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam, Tan nirodha, Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam, Tan nirodha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and so we're beginning with Sutra 112. And in the previous section, we discussed the 5 vṛttis, the 5 fluctuations in our field of consciousness. And now Patanjali is moving on to what exactly is practice. And let's go ahead and look at each word in this breakdown. So the first word is Abhyasa, which means practice, and it's repeated practice, a steady effort. Vairagya, which is dispassion or detachment. Abhyam, this is by these two ways. Tat, that, and nirodha. This is, again, restraint, stilling, or control, mastery over the movements of the mind field. And the literal rendering is their restraint is by practice and dispassion. So the restraint of what? The restraint of the vṛttis, the fluctuations in our field of consciousness, that this occurs by Abhyasa and Vairagya together. And this is an extremely important part of the Yoga Sutras because it's giving you the reality of what is required to experience an enlightened state, a state of self-realization, and as Patanjali indicates, it's called kaivalya, or the aloneness of seeing. And it happens through, again, Abhyasa. And this is not just practicing a little. This is consistently practicing over a long period of time. And then Vairagya has to be with this as well. And this is translated as dispassion or detachment, freedom from craving or aversion towards sense objects, both seen and unseen. And with this, yes, we might have to go through a process of withdrawing from the things that we are attached to so that we can break that addiction to them. But with yoga practice, this idea of Vairagya, it's a state where those things don't quite touch you. And we'll see this again later on when we talk about the big Vairagya, the big detachment. But you need to remember that this is not just simply forcing yourself to ignore things that you like or trying to detach forcibly from something. This can be better related to when you think about being a child and the things that you really liked when you were a child or a teenager, but you don't like anymore, or you really have no taste for it. It just doesn't even appeal to you. It's not that you're necessarily averse to it, but playing with a doll or playing with a toy truck, you could do it, sure, but it just doesn't, it's not something that you want to do. So through this Abhyasa, through this Vairagya, these vṛttis, these fluctuations, they calm down until eventually the self is revealed. So let's go ahead and listen to the next chant, and keep in mind that when we're doing these chants, I'll probably say this often throughout this course, chant along with Danelle. She'll chant once a word or the part of the phrase, and then you chant with her on the second time, and really focus on feeling the vibration of the word in your chest, in your throat, in your head, in your body, and in your field. One of the best ways to benefit from the sutras is not just simply thinking about them, but it's feeling the vibration of the vowels and the syllables and so on. Okay, Dana?
Okay. Sutra 113. Tatra stito, tatra stito, tatra stito, tatra stito, yatno Vyāsa, yatno Vyāsa, tatra stito, yatno Vyāsa, tatra stito, yatno Vyāsa, tatra stito, yatno Vyāsa, tatra stito, yatno Vyāsa.
And Sutra 113. The literal rendering of this is effort towards steadiness of the mind is practice. This is one way to interpret this sutra. Tatra means there, in that. Again, referring back to Abhyasa, Vairagya, the restraint of the vṛttis, the nirodha. Stitau, in steadiness, stability, the state of being firmly established in mental stillness and focus. Yatna, effort, exertion, endeavor, again, directed, conscious effort toward maintaining the desired state. Then again, the word Abhyasa, practice, sustained application of that effort over time. So effort towards steadiness of the mind is practice. And with this, we have to remember that we begin where we are. And many people, when they start practicing meditation, they learn a mantra, they learn the Kriya Yoga pranayama techniques. There's an expectation that they should have the same kind of benefit or experience that someone who's been meditating for years should have. And essentially, what yoga is doing is it is, in a way, we can look at it like it's training your mind, training your field of consciousness to stay focused on one thing. And the way you do that is by constantly bringing your awareness back to it. And so as you meditate, even if your mind goes off in 50 directions, it's the practice of every time you bring it back to the thing you said you're going to meditate on, that is creating a momentum towards focusing on that one thing. And it is this effort, this exertion that is required. And the extent of what is required of us is different for each of us as an individual. So when we think about this sutra, tatra stitau yatno Vyāsa, there in that steadiness and that stability, or at least the effort, the exertion, the endeavor to focus, this is practice. This, when we sustain this over a long period of time, even if you're terrible at it in the beginning, if you keep doing it, if you keep returning your awareness back to the point of focus, in a year, you will be able to hold your attention there much longer. In 2 years, much longer. In 3 years, in 4 years, eventually you can just hold it there. Paramahansa Yogananda, well, actually, I need to back up. It was either Roy or Paramahansa Yogananda. I don't remember the exact story. But one of them would say, the techniques work, but you have to work the techniques. The techniques work, but you have to work the techniques. So always remember, wherever you are, and as we'll see as we get to the next few sutras, when you approach this with discipline, dedication, but also devotion and love, this is what establishes your practice. And this is what's going to bring about the experience of clearer and more refined states of consciousness, eventually leading to samadhi, which is the ultimate practice of yoga. Okay, next sutra.
Okay, Sutra 114. Satu dirghakala, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Nairantarya, Satu dirghakala, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Nairantarya, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satkara sevito, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi, Dridabhumihi, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satkara sevitor, Dridabhumihi, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi, Satu dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satkara sevito, Dridabhumihi.
All right, next sutra. When we get to the end of this particular section, I'm going to pull up a document that has the transliteration of the sutras, so that when Danao leads us in the chanting of all of them together, you'll be able to see the transliteration so that you can read it as you go. I see there is an error in my transliteration where it says asevita. This should be asevito, as if there's an O at the end. So we'll try to remember that. But let's look at the word for word breakdown. Sa, that, referring to Abhyasa, practice. Tu, but indeed, emphasizes what's following, what's to come. Dirghakala, Dirghakala, this is where Patanjali is making the point that this has to be sustained over an extended period of time, that it is not short-lived. In fact, it needs to be sustained over the duration of your lifetime. If you go to the live section, I believe the live section of this YouTube channel, you'll see the last Sunday service that I did, which was entitled How Yoga Meditation, or How Kriya Yoga Runs Your Relationships. And in that discussion, I talk about how I thought I was enlightened for about 30 days after 6 to 7 years of practice. And my teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, student of Paramahansa Yogananda, told me, he said, well, even Lahiri Mahashaya continued to meditate after he was enlightened. So we have to remember that this practice is not only sustained over a long period of time, but it's for the duration of your life. Nairantarya, without interruption, continuous, unbroken. And now we get to some very important words. Satkara, asevita, and then dridha bhumi. Satkara means with respect or reverence, honoring the practice and valuing it deeply, attended to and cultivated. And then when this happens, the practice becomes firmly grounded, it becomes stable. So satkara is very important for a few reasons. Number one, a lot of people are just trying out yoga or they're just trying out meditation. They're not really taking it seriously. And this would be like trying to be in a relationship with someone and not really being there, not really being present, just kind of seeing what's going to happen, but not really being in it, not being committed to it. And if you've ever been in a relationship like that, you know that it's just not going to work in the long run. And so the same is true with our yoga practice. Is when we approach it with reverence and respect and a sense of devotion, like we would approach a friend or a beloved or someone that we care very deeply about, that is what inspires and empowers the practice to work. And some people have a mental interest in yoga. They like the idea of the philosophy. And there's plenty of philosophy to get lost in. You could spend all kinds of time going through the Sanskrit word for word and act and think like you know what it's talking about. But if you've not really engaged in it with that sincerity or penetrated actually into the practice to feel it, to sense it, to be a part of it, it's not going to have the same effect. So you have to remember, as you approach meditation, as you approach sacred study, find a way or do some soul searching, find a way to imagine or sense what would it be like if I was really devoted to this, if I actually truly had a sense of respect, a deep sense of respect for it. And if you already have that, that's wonderful. Every time you begin your practice, know that even if all you are doing is just trying to pull your awareness back to the Soham mantra or to the breath, that in of itself can be treated as a sacred or a responsibility that you attend to with reverence. And when you do that, that's when this practice becomes firmly grounded. And so the literal rendition or rendering, practice when pursued for a long time, without interruption and with reverence, this becomes firmly grounded. And one final thing about this is we have to remember that our practice is often like boiling water. If you have been given instruction from a reliable, authentic source, then you know what to do. You know that if you need to boil water, the instruction is get a pan or a pot, put water in it, and turn the stove top up until it's going to start boiling. If someone you respect gives you that information and you do it, and the pot doesn't immediately start boiling, that doesn't mean it's not working. So as you go through this process, realize that what is happening is the water is heating up. The water is heating up. And you watching it, well, you need to be present. But eventually it's going to boil. Eventually it's going to boil. And we have to approach our practice in that same way, with that sense of knowing and that sense of trust. And again, it's very helpful if you've learned from an authentic source about the procedures, because then at least you know it'll work because it's worked for other people. Okay. The next sutra.
Okay. Sutra 115. Drishtanusharvika, Drishtanusharvika, Vishaya vitrishnasya, Vishaya vitrishnasya, Drishtanusharvika, Vishaya vitrishnasya, Drishtanusharvika, Vishaya vitrishnasya, Vashikara sangya, Vashikara sangya, Vairagyam, Vairagyam, Vashikara sangya, Vairagyam, Vashikara sangya, Vairagyam, drishtanusharavika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara sangya vairagyam drishtanusharavika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara sangya vairagyam.
All right, what is the literal rendering of this? Dispassion is the mastery of one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about. So, dispassion or non attachment, detachment, is the mastery of one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about. We have the first word, drishta, seen, directly perceived, that which is seen. So the sense objects, any experience available. And this is essential. You have to always remember in this cosmology, there is anything that can be seen. So we can see a piece of paper. You can see me, I can see you. You can see your thoughts. You can see your emotions in the sense that you experience them. So this idea of seeing is related to anything that can be sensed. You can sense and experience your dreams. You can sense and experience just the very broad feeling of being an individual, like just the fact that you sense that you exist, that can be sensed, perceived. So this sutra is speaking of anything from the physical all the way up to the subtlest perception possible. That is what is seen. Anushravika, heard from tradition, scriptural. Vishaya, the object, the sphere of experience. Again, anything the senses or mind, or really the whole field of consciousness, antakarana, the inner instrument, can grasp. Vitrishnasya, this deals with craving, desire. Vashikara, mastery, control. So complete command over the pull of an object. The word that I have difficulty with always. Can you pronounce that for us, Danelle?
Sangya.
Yeah. Yeah, so like that. A term, designation, the definition or naming of something. And then again, Vairagya, dispassion or detachment, freedom from desire of both the gross and the subtle objects. And this is related to things that you have experienced, but it's also related to things that you've been told about, things that seem really wonderful that you want, that due to that description, you desire to experience. So again, this Vairagya, this dispassion, is the mastery of being free from craving for objects that are seen, that you've seen, felt, touched, experienced, or that you've heard about, or even imagined, really. So we have to develop that as well. All right, let's move on to the next sutra.
Sutra 116. Tat param Purusha kyatir Tat param Purusha kyatir Gunavai Tat param Purusha kyatir Gunavai Tat param Purusha kyatir Gunavai Tat param Purusha kyatir gunavaitrishnyam tat param parusha kyatir gunavaitrishnyam tat param parusha kyatir gunavaitrishnyam.
And I believe this will be the final sutra that we review this evening. And the interesting thing about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is that they're broken up into very useful sections. And so the next section we're going to look at will be exploring samadhi, the stages of samadhi. But this section is tying up the concept of practice and dispassion, detachment. The literal rendering, the supreme dispassion, is indifference to the gunas themselves through direct knowledge of the Purusha. Now, let me say that again. The supreme dispassion is indifference to the gunas themselves through direct knowledge of the Purusha. In order to understand the Yoga Sutras in an effective way, it's very important to understand what the Yoga Sutras are built upon. And they're built upon Sankhya philosophy. And again, in this philosophy, we have these principles. In this cosmology, we have Purusha, which is the seer, the soul, indescribable, untouched by karma, always free. You can't really, we can talk about it, we can use words, but it is what you are at the essence of your being. And you can only really be it. And the whole process of yogic meditation and Patanjali's system is to lead you back to it. So all the talking in the world about the self, the Atman, and so on, that's not going to do a whole lot. It's through the practice, the Abhyasa and the detachment indicated by Patanjali, that you see it for yourself. You experience it directly. You notice that you are it. And we have to know this cosmology. And there are also the concept of the gunas. I'd highly recommend that you get my book, which I don't have a copy to show you right here, but it's called Kriya Yoga and the Primordial Powers of Creation. Kriya Yoga and the Primordial Powers of Creation. You can look at that book like a prequel to the Yoga Sutras. It'll help you understand this idea of the gunas. And the gunas are the primordial powers of creation. They are beyond our mind. They are beyond conception. They are just vast and deep. And the reason that we're here, they create our bodies, they create our minds. They're responsible for every experience that we can have. So we need to have a sense of that. And let's look at each word within this sutra. So tat, that, param. Param, it means supreme or highest. Like when we think of paramount, or even paranormal. So that means beyond. So beyond the normal. Paramount, the highest mount. So param, supreme, highest. Purusha, again, this is the seer, supreme pure consciousness. And this is distinct from prakriti, distinct from nature, distinct from anything that we can experience, anything that is experienceable. So your personality, your body, your history, your preferences, it's beyond all of that. Kyate, through direct knowledge and clear perception. This is the kind of knowledge that you don't read a book and say, oh, I've got it. This is the kind of knowledge where someone says, have you ever tasted a mango? And you haven't. And they try to describe to you what a mango tastes like. And you say, okay, that's great. So you run around telling everyone what a mango tastes like. But then someone gives you one and you take a bite out of it. And you say, oh, that's what it is. So this is the direct knowledge. I remember the first time I ever had a fresh fig, not one of the dried out shriveled ones, but one right off the tree. And I ate that fig and I just stared at the handful of figs that I had and thought, this is amazing. in 20 years of my life, I'd never tasted anything like that before. This is what happens when you start to have deeper realizations, and you begin to move closer to self-realization. You see, you experience, you feel, you realize things that maybe you had heard about, but when it's actually there, that is what is transformational. Then we have the word guna, the three qualities of nature: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And let's see, no. When you say guna, we're not giving you a Sanskrit lesson here, but the N in guna is different than the N that you probably say when you say something like, let's see, I can't think of any words that start with N, like night. This N is touching the roof of your mouth. So it's when you touch the tongue to the very hard palate, na, that's where we get guna. And these are the three qualities of nature: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Again, you need to research those. And again, the book Kriya Yoga and the Primordial Powers of Creation will help. Sattva is the power of light, clarity, buoyancy, illumination, wisdom. Rajas is transformation, change, sometimes attachment, craving. Tamas is heaviness, darkness, form, stagnation. It's what holds things together, gives structure. And then Vaitrishnam, complete absence or thirst or craving for even the gunas. Okay, so when we put all this together, we have that there is a supreme dispassion. And when you experience this, you lose even your attachment to these primordial powers of creation. So what is being described right now is beyond the mind. You can't conceive of it. You can try to imagine it, but it's something that you only reach and touch and say, oh, whoa, that's what it is. And what Patanjali is trying to tell us here is that we go through this process of dispassion, again, practice, Vairagya, practice and dispassion, detachment. And there comes a point where, just like you lost attachment to the toys that you enjoyed as a child, there comes a point where even these subtle, primordial, vast, amazing forces of nature, they themselves become they're not interesting to you. And that's because you touch, you become, you realize, or you experience, you see. Vyāsa Houston, in one of his lectures, he made a very profound statement. He said that yoga is not about becoming, it is about seeing. So you don't become anything, but you see the reality that you are the seer, you are supremely free. And when you see that, then the field of nature, prakriti, loses its attachment. Just like when you become an adult, you see that you don't need to be attached to these toys anymore. So you just let them go. Well, through the process of yoga, you reach this supreme experience of detachment. And don't think that it is something depressing or cold and distant. It's nothing like you experience. So it's not a human state of, oh, I'm untouched by everything, so therefore I'm not interested. It is a going beyond, in a sense, everything that you know. And it's worth it. It's worth it. But in these sutras, Patanjali is telling us about practice, that it happens over a long period of time. You have to keep at it. When you engage the practice with reverence, devotion, it becomes steady and stable. Just like when you're devoted to your beloved or you're devoted to your child, any distractions or hardships or difficulties that come up, you don't mind them. I mean, you probably don't wish they were there, but you are able to endure that, keep that relationship going, stay engaged in that relationship in a loving, fulfilling way. And the distractions aren't an issue. The same thing happens when you have this reverence for your practice. The distractions, the things that take you here and there, they don't trouble you as much. And you keep practicing in this way until eventually you have this experience of detachment, of letting go, of seeing what you really are. And again, in the next set of sutras, in our next section, we will begin to explore the experience of samadhi, what it's like, the stages, how there's going to be an experience where you are thinking. There's a samadhi where you are engaged in thought. And then there's a samadhi beyond that. Then there's a samadhi of experiencing the subtle nature of things. This will be the topic for the next sutras. But before we do that, we're going to have Danelle chant all of these sutras together. And I'm going to put up on the screen here the transliteration so that you can see it, so that you can see the, I guess, English equivalent. And let me edit one of these because it's not right. Hopefully the rest of them are right. As you know, I believe I said this in the first course, neither Danelle nor I are Sanskrit scholars. So if there are errors or issues that you see, forgive us. Those are our mistakes, and they're not the result of our teachers. All right. So Danelle, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can chant each one 3 to 4 times, and then go through the whole round of it about 3 times to conclude. Okay. All right.
All right. So just relax and sit up nice and tall and feel into your heart and listen and follow along as best you can. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. Tatra stitau yatno Vyāsa. Tatra stitau yatno Vyāsa. Tatra stitau yatno Vyāsa. Tatra stitau yatno Vyāsa. Satu dirghakala nairantarya satkara sevito dridha bhumihi. 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 Drishtanu sharvika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara sangya vairagyam. 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 Tat param parusha kyatir gunavaitrishnyam. 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 Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tan nirodha. Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tan nirodha tatra stitau yatno vyāsaha tatra stitau yatno vyāsaha satu dirghakala nairantarya satkara sevito dridabhumihi satu dirghakala nairantarya satkara sevito dridabhumihi Trishtanu Sharvika Vishaya Vitrishnasya Vashikara Sangya Vairāgyam Trishtanu Sharvika Vishaya Vitrishnasya Vashikara Sangya Vairāgyam Tat Param Parusha Kyatir Gunavaitrishnyam Tat Param Parusha Kyatir Gunavaitrishnyam.
Okay, thank you. So that will conclude our section for today. Again, when you go back and you re-listen to these, remember, chant along and have that sense of feeling the vibration in your body. One of the beautiful things about chanting the sutras is that metaphysically, paranormally, each of our chakras have sounds associated with them, seed syllables, bija mantras associated with them. And each chakra has petals, or we could say, petals is a good word, petals around them, these secondary seed syllables. And those are directly related to the sounds within Sanskrit. So anytime you chant a mantra, anytime you chant the Yoga Sutras, each mantra, each sutra itself has a particular pattern of sounds, and it would be like as if all the little lights on the petals of your chakras lit up when you chanted those specific things. So it can be very helpful for your internal energetic and metaphysical system. So before we conclude with chanting Om 3 times tonight, again, I want to thank you, Danelle, for being here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see everyone next week as well. And we'll conclude by chanting Om 3 times together. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you next time.